start on time, so that's what we'll be doing. 10:30 on the gong. It's an honour to be with some old friends and some new ones here today. The power of convening is stronger than ever post-COVID in my mind, so this is very important. I'm Glen McDermott, the founder of Red Rock Branding. A bit of background for me, I led a marketing teams in consumer brands globally for many years. At the same time, I lost many friends to mental illnesses in outback Australia. So in 2010, Red Rock was created to build communities around healthy people on a healthy planet. We have worked with many state agencies in the US and been able to deliver measurable impact, bridging the gap between public health and marketing. We are also sponsors of EPA, and make sure that you have or get your little notebook here, which I'm sure you will fill with goodies, inspired by the great outback of Australia. Today we are here to unpack early detection across generations across the world. The speakers today have all made significant contributions to first episode impact. They have all broken barriers to treatment and are here to describe what that looked like and lessons learned. My hope is the narrative will inspire our continued collaboration, and I hope we have time at the end to hear from you as to what that all looks like. So I invite each speaker 10 minutes to make space for that, and I welcome Jan Olav to kick us off.
I better keep watching the... What?
Oh.
Thank you for your invitation. If I'm talking to... if it isn't loud enough, you must give me a sign and I'll try to...
Up the volume.
Yeah, and thank you, Glenn, for inviting me, and I'm honored to be here, and you have given me a challenge in a little historical travel, so to speak. So it's a kind of personal as well, so I would say how it started and what the challenges was and maybe what they still are in a way. And of course I will present some of the results from the TIPS study. There's a lot of people from TIPS in this room, and I share whatever honor there would be with all of them. Come from Stavanger, Scandinavia. Stavanger is... Oh, okay. Back. Yeah. It's on the southwestern coast of Norway. And I've been given the task talking about 35 years in 10 minutes, and that's about 17 seconds per year, so please pay attention. So what led us on the track to early intervention? For me, it started in the beginning of the 80s when I was a young resident, and I found the clinic full of patients with a schizophrenia diagnosis. So I wondered how many new cases do we really get each year? And that was my first scientific work. And I found that the incidence really was very, very low, but the prevalence was very high. So when there were so few new cases, I began to think that if we changed the resources to the first episode cases instead of using all the resources on the chronic cases, maybe that would be a difference. And that was back in 1984 or something like that. So as a young resident in 1980, I also found it much easier to establish a rapport with first episode patients. And I also noticed that we had no plans in the clinic for follow-up of first episode after they had remitted. We just waved goodbye and hoped we'd never see them again. We feared the word and the prognosis. We had no idea of the outcome. And we all suffered from the clinician's illusion that schizophrenia was a chronic disorder for all that suffered from it. There was a lot of countertransference. We hesitated in setting the right diagnosis, and I'm sorry to say, some of us still do. There was a lot of fear in the population for that word, that very frightening word, schizophrenia, a lot of stigma, and a lack of knowledge around psychosis in special, but mental disorders in general. Among general public, the GPs, the health professionals working in the hospitals, teachers, and all our colleagues in a way. We had a very old-fashioned view on psychosis, what it was. But there was some people like Alanen from Finland who already in that time talked about the phase-specific approach to psychosis. And we learned a lot from the Finnish people. And McGorry's staging and Alanen's phase-specific concepts are actually the same, I would say. It developed into us researching the course of these disorders, and in 1992 we discovered that in Stavanger we had a very, very long with duration of untreated psychosis, at least 2 years, and that was a big surprise for us. And then our largest or biggest challenge was how to reduce it. So we started trying to do that. And to make a long story short, we found that 2 things were necessary to reduce it, and still are. You have to have a low threshold, easy access, and you have to do continuous information work towards all these parts of the populations that I mentioned for a little while ago. And I'm happy to say we still carry out that work in our region. This is one of the first information campaigns we did in 1995, where we told all the public in our region about the very early signs on psychosis. That was breaking news. That was breaking boundaries at that time, I would say. Yeah, and we did research connected to this, of course, and these days we are focusing, I would say, on primary prevention of psychosis, and we managed to reduce the duration of untreated psychosis in the first episode, as you probably all know, very significant results. It was published the 10-year follow-up in American Journal, and Venkat and Felden over there was main author, and it also showed that this gave us a much better prognosis when we reduced it. That's the short story, but the important story. And that was also when we compared to the Opus study in Denmark, they had a kind of easy access, but they had no information campaigns. And when we had no information campaigns, then it went up. And our colleague Inge over there showed that a little later, that it was obligatory to have information campaigns in addition to a low threshold. So Glenn asked me to think about what has happened since, and I'm very happy to see the development in many countries, in Australia, Canada, Denmark and so on, with Headspace and, as we heard today, Soul Space. But we have also got a much better understanding of what psychosis really is. I would say maybe that is early intervention's major achievement, that we now look upon psychosis in a very different way compared to when I started out in 1980. So you can never stop informing people. You have to do it for all eternity. And to conclude, it has brought about another and better understanding of these disorders. It has brought about also a lot less use of medication. We have reduced the dosages of medication enormously, and we have also been able to pave the way for psychosocial interventions in psychosis to a much greater extent than was usual in the early 1980s. And it started out for me with, in 1984, with the first article where I showed the incidence was very low, so it was a manageable task to give the first episode psychosis patients a decent and comprehensive treatment, and still is. And it ended up so far with Ingi over there and myself writing this article in Psychosis, Journal of Psychosis, a couple of years ago, where we stated that modern understanding of psychosis has gone from looking upon them as brain disorders to stress disorders. And I think that is the fundamental achievement of early intervention so far.
It's wonderful to hear you speak so eloquently and so on time. Thank you for setting the standard there, Jan Olav. I've heard that story many times, but each time I hear it, it's slightly different. And thank you for setting the standard and the baseline for the work that I think has inspired many people in this group. So, unfortunately, Vanu Trihari cannot join us today, and unfortunately, he has asked me to step in for him and explain a little bit about our next story, which is Mindmap. Nina is here to also present the brand, so I'm sure you'll be hearing from her at some point. So allow me to talk a little bit about Mindmap. It has had 2 iterations, what we'll call Mindmap 1.0, which was a 10-town cluster around New Haven in Connecticut, which, for your benefit, is just north of New York. And it was really set up within the STEP clinic, and it was to replicate the success of the TIPS model, and now you know what was worth replicating. And the result were also very encouraging to see that the DUP was halved within that area. The problem, simplified, because we like to unify, simplify and amplify these complex medical problems. So part of that process is getting simple images that our consumer audience can relate to. And this is one that sticks in my mind as doing a great job of that, just talking about early intervention and how that can have profound effects on the quality of life, however that is measured. So that is a thought that captures most minds in this room and is nothing new. A little look around the visual signals. That Mindmap 1.0 was set up in 2015. It was funded to 2019 on the 10 towns. We learnt a lot. We learnt a ton. Nina was a great collaborator, giving us feedback from the field constantly. We were sending all sorts of signals out on all sorts of media because we knew that we had to send the signals to where these patient populations were. And that was probably the most significant shift, again, pulling off of the TIPS signals about going to where the population is. So we became we produced a lot of videos, a lot of social media. We got great results in terms of increasing phone calls and patients, and obviously the website visitors are up too. So we produced a lot of data, and it was very helpful for us to look at what works and what doesn't. And social media, and particularly targeted social media, was an important part of getting there. The results were profound. The DUP was reduced from 324 to 46, which is a wonderful, steady decline. And this was only possible with Nina and the clinical team running an operationally superb clinical team. So our job was to deliver calls, and their job was to deliver the treatment. And I must say, I really enjoyed the synergy of those two groups. We, as a marketing team, learned a lot about the clinical world. I think Nina might say that she enjoyed working with us because it helped unify, simplify and amplify the complexity of this medical problem. And that is an ongoing benefit, shall we say, of what we did. it was, of course, anchored in a control group out of Boston. So we wanted to see, well, what are the results with the campaign versus without? And this slide talks pretty clearly about how those were. So the control group was very important to the clinical outcomes of 1.0. Just to tease up of the key elements of 2.0, we were funded by the IEPA funds, so we had the ability to amp up the public campaign in terms of taking it to mass media. We had TV appearances. There's Vanud, he has made an appearance. And it really helped the clinical team, I think, get public interface and really just become a little more comfortable about talking in public about the value and the importance of their work. And I think Nina might agree on that it had a sort of a halo effect there. And targeted social media, obviously social media has changed a lot in the 10 years since we've been working. They're known for tweaking algorithms, not always in our favour. So part of the talk we'll be doing tomorrow afternoon, we'll be taking detail about that, but it still remains a very good way of targeting this population. So this diagram simplifies the funnel. You know, doing a lot of work in consumer marketing, you talk about the customer funnel. Well, we're using some of those disciplines, some of those ideas around, well, what does it take to get people into treatment? It takes a lot of work. As per Jan's comment, you need to be constantly messaging. You're competing with so many rivaling and in sometimes conflicting messages that we as in the research community have an obligation to be out there and participating in social media in a very clear and thoughtful way. And when you do, and I think the ladies from CAR might have something to say about that, how that has enabled their impact considerably if it's done thoughtfully. So social media, website visits, quiz takers, we describe our work as more educational than marketing, and our clients certainly need education. They're not looking for marketing. Nobody likes marketers. Hands up in this room who likes marketers. All right, so we deliver education, and that's what our population is so looking for. So the quiz has always been a very active, sticky part of the websites that we build. They provide a lot of useful data that the clinical team can go on and use. So what's next? 2.0, we were funded with the IEPA fund to take all the lessons learned in 1.0 to a statewide campaign in 2.0. Connecticut, if you don't know, it's a small little state, 3.6 million people, manageable, we think, and a good place to test some of these theories. So it became a very great place to continue this work. So building on what we learned in 1.0, we were funded to do 2.0. We did a lot of TV, radio, mass media, really dialed up the impressions considerably, knowing that that was an input that we needed. And you can see here the visuals are all set up in a way that they're simple, they're easy to understand, there's no acronyms, there's no scientific language. We're talking in their native language. Very important step. So 2.0, unfortunately, was recently cancelled due to IEPA funding. So the results are still out, can we say. But the work continues with STEP and the early detection there, and we'll be watch this space, I guess, in the coming year to see how the results have been impacted. But one thing that Vanud asked me to particularly call out is gratitude to some team members that are in this room. Jan Olav, you've already heard of, and I remember going to Norway and receiving his tour of the fjords and how inspiring it was, obviously in the geography and space, but how they had tailored the campaign to the place, the people in that place. And that was a big learning when we started talking with the folks in New Orleans about, well, how different is Connecticut to New Orleans? And the short answer is a lot. And so it's around creating messages that resonate with the young folks of these specific populations. So tailored design was one. Scientific rigour was something that Vanud is, he's beating that drum constantly, and the journals that have been written up obviously speak to that. And the community action, Inga, over here has been always working with the community in the many different buckets of influence and operating within those buckets, knowing that our clients are already operating there and need to hear information about this from them. Long-term impact when she's over here, and she can talk a little later about the measurement overall, not just during the campaign. What does it look like 10 years later? And Tom McGlashan was very instructive in connecting Yale with the TIPS folks and so on. So just wanted to call out to all those great folks that has been part of that. So I am right on time, and I'd like to hand it over. Are you comfortable?
Yeah, if not, I'll tell you. All right, just gonna grab a little water. Good afternoon, or good morning. My name is Serena Chaudry. I'm here today representing CALM, Clear Answers to Louisiana Mental Health, the early detection campaign associated with our clinic, EPIC NOLA. We work in New Orleans, Louisiana, and EPIC works side by side with CALM to help Louisiana better understand and treat psychosis. So I'm representing today, but I have to call out the people in the room who have helped to inspire us and also with whom we work on a daily basis to do this good work. So we're standing on the shoulders of TIPS and Mindmap, and then my teammates, Patricia and Ashley Weiss, are in the room from the EPIC and CALM teams, and we work with Glenn and Eleanor and Claire from the Red Rock team on a weekly basis to create the content that I'm going to share here today. So I'm going to start by jumping in.
I hear she's psychotic. I don't want people like that working here.
What are the customers thinking? I want to help her, but I don't know how.
Society's delusion, people like her never get well. The reality, recovery from psychosis is real. Will you choose the delusion or choose to change the narrative surrounding psychosis? Visit calmnola.org to learn more.
So I literally jumped right in. That is a clip from our current campaign, the Choose Your Delusion campaign. We created this in collaboration with Red Rock and Fireside Films, our production company on the ground in New Orleans. This was created with intention to inspire or provoke the community and individuals to question the words they choose to talk about people with mental illness and to question their own delusion about how they see people or misperceive people with mental illness. So we're direct and pointed purposefully with this. And you'll see a similar theme in our approach and research methods. So as other campaigns have had, we have targeted social media as part of CALM's strategy for impacting, educating, and treating psychosis in New Orleans and Louisiana. We have a growing Instagram following. We are on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. We have a medley of videos that include patient experience, of different people in the community speaking about how psychosis has touched their lives. We have taken to the community landscape and used mass transit and billboards. You can see some of them here on this slide with our previous campaign that was focused on clinical high risk. So you see Ashley and I found a bus as we were. We found a bus in a parking lot and we sort of got in trouble for sneaking in. But we sat down and we got a picture. Family history of psychosis, the risks are real. Going back to the speaker this morning, we have to be educating young people who have a family history of psychosis about their risk for psychosis and their increased risk when they're using cannabis, which takes us to the next billboard. transit sign, paranoid when high, psychosis risks are real. And then finally, in the lower right-hand side, losing touch with reality. Let's figure it out. Engaging the community to figure it out together. This is a team effort in the creation of this messaging as much as it is in the treatment of this illness. We have borrowed from, copied, Mindmap's idea of having a quiz on their website. So you can go to our website as an individual experiencing some symptoms of psychosis and take a quiz that helps give you insight about what might be happening. You can be a carer and take that same quiz and get feedback on that. And then you have the opportunity to, at the end of the quiz, reach out to me and ask questions about the quiz and then help get a facilitated referral either to our clinic or to another clinic. We have had a good, I'd say more than 30% of the inquiries coming from other states. And so because of our network, much of which is here, we're able to help facilitate referrals in other areas. We are university-based, much as Mindmap is, and so we're a freestanding clinic in New Orleans, but we're associated with Tulane School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry. We've talked about hard pointed messaging. It is intentional, and we're simultaneously trying to cultivate insight for individuals who might be experiencing symptoms to help them have the courage to move forward, ask questions, and seek treatment, while also cultivating insight for communities to be able to identify, right, these symptoms that they're seeing in young people. We were talking earlier about the necessity of being in the community, being in schools, being out there educating to engage people. This billboard, which you've already seen, is one of our favorites. It was huge. I mean, it honestly was from the ceiling here to the floor, and it's in one of the neighborhoods with a high prevalence of violence and cannabis use in New Orleans, and it was there for months, and it brought me a lot of joy to see it every time we drove by.
And those were students.
Yes.
Who,
that's our public health, another public health intern.
Right, that were driving around and took the picture. So it's cool to see the students in the public health school and the undergrad school and the medical schools. We teach a lot learning about early psychosis because we need them to learn about these from a diagnostic standpoint, but then so they're learning the importance of early detection in the context of first episode psychosis, and so they get really excited about it.
And we engage our student learners in all different capacities, and that's a great segue. So here we have, we do many community events. We do a lot of events on university campuses. We table, we hand out some of the paraphernalia we have here today. We try to educate through these tchotchkes, so to speak, get people to engage. We have a postcard over there that has a link to the quiz, trying to get people to take action after interacting with us. Here you have some pictures of students. I think this one might have, this was either a high school or college campus. We have some learners at a conference, some of our medical residents. We have interns in the corner here. One of our interns is starting medical school right now, which is exciting. We have Ashley up here testifying in front of a congressional hearing. And we're out there doing this work in different capacity on a daily basis. Here are some statistics. So from this campaign, this clinical high-risk campaign, we had 1.6 million transit impressions and then 552 click-throughs on our mobile ads. So those included these bus stops where we have the QR code for our quiz, as well as some of the internal bus ads. We've expanded our reach and started a podcast last year. The podcast is graciously and creatively edited by Claire, sitting across from me. And twice a month, Ashley and I have been interviewing people whose lives have been touched by psychosis. They can be researchers, clinicians, advocates, people with lived experience. And it has been both humbling and fun to bring people into the space and just have conversations with them. But this is our attempt to destigmatize psychosis on a regular basis. If anyone in this room is interested in being on our podcast, please see me or Claire or Ashley at the end of this. It's fun, and yeah, it is actually really fun. And you can tune in wherever you get your podcasts. They're out there. Why social media matters. And so this is a lot of learning that we have, done from our friends at Red Rock. People follow people, not just organizations. And it's the people who do the work on a daily basis, as well as those young people and carers whose lives are impacted by psychosis. So humanizing the mission is a huge part of our education. Trusting the travels through people, having this strategy as a way to organically cultivate insight and then to spread awareness. And at the core of all of this is breaking stigma. We heard earlier, and I don't think we can, reiterate enough the fact that education and breaking stigma is ongoing and eternal, as you eloquently said at the beginning. Another way that we are attempting to do it is to include our patient artists in the work we do, in the advocacy we do, and in bringing their voice to the table. This is a young woman, a young girl who came to our clinic after her first episode of psychosis. She is super talented. She has a craft of taking sneakers and painting them and then selling them. She's also great at spoken word. We've included her in some of our community events. We've given her the opportunity to sell her shoes and to share her stories. We want to recognize the young people and their families who've been impacted by psychosis and allow them to sit at the table with us, so to speak. So just reiterating the fact that we have worked collaboratively, this is 100% a team effort. We meet with the Red Rock team every week for 30 minutes to talk about the campaign, where we're at, what we need to do differently on our podcast, all the things that make this campaign great and have made it successful and very sticky in New Orleans. And while doing this, and I think you stated this, and I want to reiterate, this campaign clearly looks very different than Mindmap, than TIPS. We are connecting this to our community and taking in the culture, the creativity, the grittiness of New Orleans, and incorporating that into our messaging, into our color schemes, into how we communicate with the community at large.
Especially with art, because like New Orleans is such a art and music focused community that's something that's naturally our patients are creative. And so it just makes sense to use their creativity to help our campaign, and it fits in with culture. Say, vibe that they even they're not artists themselves because it's where they live. And I remember something that Ellen Moore of the Red Rock team said, which Serena and I tend to err on the darker side of the color palette. But Eleanor was like said, it really makes sense because everything else in New Orleans is like so bright and busy. Like lots of colors and Mardi Gras and all these things that when we were putting like big black billboards with like big white fonts that they really stands out amongst a very like busy landscape. So it's not just like our taste in color.
Strategy.
It turned out to like really mean something.
Yeah.
It's cool.
For sure. So in wrapping up, what's next? We are in the midst of expanding and we are moving beyond New Orleans. We are currently in two different areas, South Central Louisiana, and in a couple of weeks we'll be in Acadiana, which are outside of the New Orleans area. And our goal is to expand beyond there. While we expand clinical services, we will be expanding Calm, and we'll be looking at the culture, talking to the people in the communities there to create Calm campaigns for the areas outside of New Orleans. This is just to reiterate the impact that we've had through these campaigns, and we've successfully shortened the duration of untreated psychosis within our clinic setting. And we are looking to study this over the course of our expansion. The This moment is our 10-year anniversary of Epic Our Clinic and our 9-year anniversary of Calm. And it'll be our 4th annual In My Mind. So In My Mind is this celebration that we've had on an annual basis for 4 years, where we bring these artists, like the one I showed here, to a community event. We allow them to speak, to sing, to create art, to sell art. We offer them scholarships to create art for the event. We have live music. We have Mardi Gras crews. It is so much fun. If anyone finds themselves in New Orleans on November 7th this year, you should come to our event or plan for a future event. It really is special. And that is it.
Before and I'm not working at this Peaasi company which is implementing it. I work at the university and in the private clinic, but we collaborate because it's very good to have some scientists outside the company to build credit to this science-based foundation. So I'm here today to present it, but I know almost all the team who is behind the big work, and we are developing this model and also thinking some new ways. And actually, I think I don't have to explain why we have to do it. It's not so much about psychosis, the model, but when we have young people coming in, we screen for psychosis. But the slide you see here is this global picture of health of our world. The blue ones include lots of diseases which are preventable if we pay more attention or lose weight or move more or whatever, and we have lots of mental health issues here. And the next slide is even more serious because it's more serious for us who live in Europe and developed countries, because the quantity of mental health issues are even more important. Somehow we are here, and those are children which are not young children, which are young children from 5 years until 14-year-old, and we can see the depression, anxiety, the proportion is increasing all the time, which makes us think that the early prevention and detection and also psychosis, which are all intertwined, the theme is even more important. So, aims, we adopt it, we test it, how it works. The point is that this is Australian, this slide, and it's our Estonian website. We do lots of campaigns as well, and it's not only Headspace's intervention we have, but we have some group interventions, some special private sessions, and lots of people. We go to schools and to workplaces and so on. And if I talk about how it went, the first kind of pilot study of adapted setting, we had 221 individuals aged 15 until 24-year-old. The problem was we wanted to have a control group, but we had to refuse it because it wasn't ethical to put them on a wait list if their help was available. And we had to make this kind of hard decision, which is more important to the health of the young people or the science. Right now we thought that we have to wait for more. And we have actually ongoing bigger trial right now with control group, which is next step. So, It's complicated. Lots of you are familiar with the Headspace model, but there is an intake session where we really screen for psychosis and those really warning signs. And we in our team there are lots of clinical psychologists as well, and we can refer them also to some outside clinics to get some help, because the Headspace model is not so much about psychosis or very serious problems, but more like a prevention. So we screen, and we don't screen only so that we'll deal with those people who are more serious. Let's get rid of them. We deal with them as well. We take care. Sometimes we have special counseling. Sometimes we refer to them some mental health institutions, or our own clinical psychologist will deal with them. We had several measures. And we had to adapt some questionnaires from English into Estonian, which is also a different story. But the big picture is that all those measures we had, the picture is the effectiveness of the Headspace is very good. And we were especially surprised of the large effect sizes. You're very familiar that sometimes we do something and there are some effects, but the effect sizes are not so big. But in this study, we were really happy to see large effect sizes, which is Cohen's d more than 1 in many cases. And really, I checked them 10 times because. And also we did this kind of scaling, clinical staging with cutoff points. We have our own Estonian measure as well. It's very well validated, but because Estonia is so tiny and small, and lots of people outside of Estonia don't know about it. But really, I assure it works. And the clinical staging showed that it was more the rates of depression actually were lowered significantly, like in some cases even 62%. And we wanted to know what other factors are affecting the outcome. Of course, it's always when you have higher scores in some problematic issues, then you will get a bigger effect. This is also true, but there were no effect of age, gender, of how many sessions they got counseling, and some other confounders. We can say that actually it works for this group of people. It's not only 15, 16 years old, but it works for more over 20-year-olds as well. Also, we added some questions about behavioral measures, how much they will sleep or eat, or some really, if you think about Maslow's pyramid of needs, which is classical, but all what hasn't changed is this basic level of physical needs, which we have to address in every occasion. And if we measure these kind of things, then you can see even largest improvements. And what's next? We have supported quite a lot young people, many young people already, and we are working harder. Government has granted funding. We don't know how long, but we have to show some results as well. Right now they are happy with what we do. And we are really part of ongoing Horizon project, and we try to measure the effects better. And I think one reason of the large effect sizes are because young people can choose between modules. we boost their autonomy. We don't say that, okay, you have to deal with this. They can choose, okay, I want to deal with my emotions. I want to deal my sleep patterns or something. And that's which helps. Although we were thinking that not so many people chose how to deal with their sleep patterns or some physical activity. There were the majority of them chose still to deal with emotions. And if you think what we miss from this intervention, maybe we should use create some substance use modules or problematic smartphone use, but they don't see it as a problem. And it's a problem. And I hope even we actually created this smartphone use module, and they don't want it. But I think the other modules will help them to regulate themselves anyway, and if they can choose between those modules, it helps as well. So, big thank you to my colleagues who do the hard work there. And one final remark about what we have here. It's absolutely different scientific article. It's about loneliness, and it's measured within 15, 16-year-old students during this PISA test, which is like checking how good are they in maths. So anyway, all over the world. And you can see the loneliness measure there is increasing, and it's coincidence with the use of smartphones, which means the loneliness is a major doom within its depression and also psychosis and everything. We have to deal with internet use and smartphone use, but it needs bigger consensus how to deal with it. So, thank you.
And next up, I'd like to welcome Kevin McDonald. Welcome to Kevin. Take a seat.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. So I'm Kevin McDonald. I'm a research coordinator at McGill University and Douglas Institute in Montreal. So it's nice to be here and present on a study that we did a few years ago on learning health systems for early intervention services for psychosis. Pan-Canadian multi-stakeholder Delphi. And so I'm presenting on behalf of a pretty large team. Manuel Ferrari is right here, one of the researchers involved. The other researchers are Srividya Iyer and Jay Shaw. So the context that led us to this study, well, first of all, you all know that there's really strong evidence for the effectiveness of early intervention services for psychosis. And the core components have been really well described in standards and guidelines in many countries in the world and also within many of the Canadian provinces. But there's still a gap between what the evidence says and sometimes what's implemented in practice on certain of the core components of EI. Some examples are like peer support or family interventions. They're not always consistently implemented. And at the same time, there's, growing interest in learning health systems and measurement-based care. So really these data-driven initiatives where we use data, collect as much information as we can to learn from, to really help programs improve based on what they're doing. So we decided to do this Delphi study in that context. So looking to get expert consensus around the most meaningful domains, indicators, and measures that we should be using in a learning health system for early psychosis. So that's kind of a big figure that we don't need to super focus on, but I just wanted to illustrate a little bit what a learning health system is if you're not familiar, but it's the concept of collecting data systematically, taking that data to learn from it, and then from what we learn, improve services. but do that on an ongoing basis. So it seems simple in a way, but it is complicated to implement because you need to use some technology to facilitate the data collection. You need to have a community of practice of engaged people who want to do this and want to improve and really create that culture of learning. So a Delphi study, what we did, so Delphi is a consensus building methodology. So usually you identify a group of experts who are best positioned to answer these questions, and then you do multiple rounds of questionnaires with the same expert group. And then the results from one round, they inform the next round. And we gave feedback to the participants between each round. So we give them a little report showing what did people think of these different items in the last round. So if the group as a whole agreed that these things were important, then we would retain those items. But where there was disagreement, we would ask the group to think about that question again and then rate it again. So our more specific objectives were to look into the values and principles of early intervention, the aims of early intervention, and how would we measure progress towards those aims. And then the most important outcomes and treatment aspects. And again, how would we measure those outcomes and treatment aspects? So we had representation from across the country in our expert group as much as we could. And we divided the panel into three stakeholder groups. So the lived experience experts, which were the patients and family members. The second group were the clinicians, and the third group were the researchers and other experts. The study was in French and in English. So this is just a summary slide showing the 3 rounds of questionnaires that we did. So the first round was a bit more open-ended. So we sought feedback from the panel on all these questions. And then in the next 2 rounds is when we asked them to rate or rank the different elements. So we got consensus after 3 rounds. 66 participants in the first round, 52 in the second, and 50 in the third. So that's, for this kind of study, it's like high retention rates. And the 3 groups were divided pretty evenly in terms of number of experts in each group. So one thing that was interesting, what we did, we looked at consensus, first of all, for the group as a whole, to see if the entire group agreed on an item, we would retain it. But then we also look, as a second step, we looked at consensus for individual stakeholder groups, so that if certain aims or certain outcomes were really important for one of the stakeholder groups, we would ensure that we bring it to the next round for the group to rate again. So that was just to ensure that we're valuing 3 stakeholder groups equally. That had a bit of an impact on our findings that I'll talk about in the next slides. So some of the findings that we got, so for values and principles of early intervention, in the first round, we asked this as an open-ended question just to generate ideas from our group. And so we came up with a list of 23 values and principles. And then we asked everybody to identify what would be their top 10 values and principles of EI. So to narrow down the list, which wasn't an easy task, but interestingly, like these 7 that are listed here in bigger font are the 7 that were common to all 3 stakeholder groups. So there is something a bit core about these 7 principles. For the outcomes and treatment aspects, the group identified 14 different outcomes and treatment aspects that were considered essential or very important. So those are listed on the left side of the screen there. A lot of the established outcomes and treatment aspects of early intervention, but also some new ones that came from this panel, like making sense of and understanding the experience of psychosis is maybe a bit of a lesser cited outcome for early intervention. And then the next step after that, we asked the group to pick from those 14, what would be the 5 that we should really include in the learning health system if we want to routinely measure these outcomes. And so the 5 that came out as most important were quality of life, work and school outcomes, recovery, service engagement, and satisfaction. So for us, that was an interesting finding because this is not, it's not about medication or symptoms or some of the more usual things that we tend to measure in early intervention, but these are more like recovery-oriented domains. And so finally, this slide, just to give you a sense of the kinds of findings that we have, this is just a subset of the findings, but for different outcomes and treatment aspects, we ask people to identify ways to measure them. So for each outcome, we have like a list of what were considered the most important ways to measure the different outcomes. So for us, this is valuable for like teams or for programs or networks who are trying to establish learning health systems. It can support them in making decisions about how best to measure these different outcomes that are important. And two things I wanted to note. So first of all, the predominance of patient-reported measures throughout our Delphi. This was really an important concept that people found really essential, and is consistent with current views on measurement, that we should be asking patients and families themselves about how they're doing. And the other interesting finding, I don't know if it's not bold, but we have items that are called collecting stories or opinions through interviews or focus groups. So that was our way of asking about qualitative data, because we wanted to know, do people think that's important also in a learning health system? And that's one place where it was our lived experience stakeholder group who really consistently valued collecting qualitative data. And so through the Delphi process, because they valued it, we would bring it back to the group as a whole. And then the group ended up agreeing that this was in fact really nice data to also collect. So that's it. Just to conclude, I would say, just to link this to the theme of the conference of breaking boundaries, I would say that learning health systems are still pretty new, even though there's a few that have been implemented in early psychosis in different countries, and even in our home province of Quebec, there's one that's been implemented for a number of years. But there's still a new and pretty revolutionary approach to organizing healthcare. So that's, we think that with our study, we were able to push this forward and really support learning health systems make decisions about what measures and what indicators they should include in their LHS. Another interesting thing, just a bit of a side finding, was generally the interest that we had in our study. So the experts that were involved were really engaged, and I kept getting a lot of emails from everyone wanting to know the results and wanting to know more. And our high retention rates also across the rounds just kind of showed that there is interest for learning health systems in Canada and probably elsewhere also. So that's it. So our study, we got measures and indicators that we can use in learning health systems. And for us, it's a bit of a foundational piece as we continue our research, because we continue building towards implementing learning health systems in Canada. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, to wrap it up, we have Cecilia McGow. Here is Cecilia. Who's been travelling all night, by the way, so go easy on her.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cecilia McGow from the nonprofit Students with Psychosis. In this part of the session, we will be focusing on storytelling from people with the experience of psychosis. I am personally someone living with schizophrenia. So I'll share a little bit about my personal story and also the founding of the nonprofit Students with Psychosis. And we'll be hearing more from our students as well. So I was an astronomy and astrophysics major, and at the age of 17, I was lucky enough to co-discover a pulsar through the Pulsar Science Collaboratory. A pulsar is a super dense neutron star that emits dipole electromagnetic radiation. So basically think of a star much, much larger than our sun, exploding its outer layers and leaving behind a dense core. That core can be a pulsar. This opened some doors for me, such as helping represent the United States in the International Space Olympics in Russia, and also being a Virginia Aerospace Science and Technology Scholar through NASA Langley Research Center. But during this time, I had a secret that I was too scared and too embarrassed to share, and that is, I have schizophrenia. And in February, the second semester of my freshman year, my life changed drastically when I tried to take my own life. Why, you might ask? Because my life had become a waking nightmare. even though I've hallucinated for as long as I can remember seeing shadowy figures in the closet and telling my parents, but hey, what 5-year-old isn't scared of the closet, right? I mean, they made a Pixar movie all about it. But for me, my hallucinations became more vivid during high school and just snowballed into college. I started hallucinating the clown from the older adaptation of Stephen King's It, spiders, including giant spiders, and also a woman that I would refer to as the girl who had a knife that she would sometimes stab me with. These hallucinations became very difficult for me to focus as a student. And I used to not be so open about talking about my hallucinations because people would look at me in fear. What I want to say here is that if you're someone who dreams, then you might see or hear and feel things while you're dreaming. I'm just someone who can't turn off my nightmares, even though I'm awake. And that's not a reason to be scared of me. It took me 8 months after my suicide attempt to get the proper medical help because of conversations such as with my parents. I remember being on the phone with my mom, telling my mom, "Mom, I'm sick. I'm feeling things that aren't there. I need to go to the doctor." Her response, no. You can't tell anyone about this. This can't be on our medical history. Think of your sisters. Think of your sisters' futures. People are going to think that you're crazy. People are going to think that you're dangerous, and you won't be able to get a job. What I would like to say to this now is don't let anyone, including yourself, get in the way of your medical help. I am convinced that I wouldn't be here today if I didn't get that proper medical support. I wasn't open about my diagnosis until my second hospitalization because the police were involved. And let me emphasize that I am not a violent person. Actually, for part of high school, I lived in a homeless abuse shelter. The police were involved because as a mode of transportation, but I had to convince them not to put handcuffs on me, and they escorted me outside of my dorm where there was a police car parked in front of our dining commons. So friends saw me being put into a police car. And at that moment, the cat was out of the bag, and I had to set the story straight. And let me just say that I don't regret being open about my schizophrenia. I'm not embarrassed about having schizophrenia. But what infuriates me is that I did not get the choice of when, how, and if I wanted to be open about my diagnosis. Now I'm an advocate to help other people living with schizophrenia. And part of this advocacy was founding the nonprofit Students with Psychosis. And I'm not going to rest until there's a day that no one feels ashamed of saying the words, "I have schizophrenia," or "I have psychosis," because it's okay. It's okay to have schizophrenia. What I also would like to share today is that when I was first diagnosed with schizophrenia, and particularly when I had my suicide attempt that February, second semester of freshman year, I thought that the schizophrenia symptoms was not only having me lose my mind, but also lose my future. So I would like to also share that I have also returned back to Astro. I am currently a mentor at NASA Langley Research Center's, their VAST program. And also during this summer, I was back at the Green Bank Telescope, that same place where that pulsar discovery happened so many years ago. For perspective, you could fit 2 football fields within that telescope. Because schizophrenia did not claim my life, I'm here today. And I'm still pursuing astrophysics and also advocating for people living with schizophrenia. The nonprofit Students with Psychosis empowers students and advocates worldwide through community building, collaboration, and service. We're going to be hearing a bit from our students and members. They inspire me every single day, and they are my why on why I do this advocacy. The first member we're going to be hearing from is Emeka Shima. He is our president on our executive board. 100% of our executive board is from the lived experience perspective of our students, because we find it important to center the community that we serve. We'll be also hearing from Joel. He is the Vice President of Administration. He is from the Philippines. We'll be hearing from Lou from Argentina and has been a member on the executive board since 2020. We would also be hearing from Christina, who is Vice President of Management and is here in Germany, actually also here in this room. Hey, Christina. So we're going to hear from them through this video.
Today, I want to address very briefly about what I would like sometimes for people to understand about psychosis and people living with it. Because for me, there are times when in social circles it's very difficult to explain maybe my struggles and to ask for help. I feel there are times where psychosis and some mental illnesses fall into being invisible struggles that may lead sometimes to feel embarrassed about asking for help. So I think it's important, whether it's in school or work or other social spaces, that we as people with psychosis can feel safe and can feel in an environment where we can try to explain, because some symptoms are quite difficult to put in words sometimes. But if you feel in a good space and comfortable, then it gets easier. So just try to understand what could be happening and how the person can be needing help to voice out some things that could make a difference.
What I wish people understood better about psychosis is that it can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, rich or poor, psychosis can happen to anyone. So everybody should be concerned or at least involved.
I was always quite passionate about academics. I loved reading academic articles and writing essays and term papers. However, when I started my master's degree, something has changed. Very slowly, my motivation and concentration were getting worse. And despite being naturally an early bird person, I couldn't get out of bed. And I started missing my morning lectures and appointments.
For me, when I was in university studying and experiencing symptoms of psychosis, I found it to be my personal health. I still remember having to listen to music with my headphones to drown out the illusions right before going to class. This personal health eventually became a personal achievement when I was able to graduate.
It can be a challenge sometimes, navigating school and work in tandem. But I feel like being a student with psychosis makes me feel that unique and embraces the diversity of the school. So I'd rather have more people who are different, all people are the same. Everyone has their own specialty. And whether it's talented as a student or talented in the workforce, I think it's important to note that there's no one-size-fits-all individual. So I'd like to also say that the accommodations I have received in school, these definitely include having a distraction-free room while taking tests. Because sometimes people living with psychosis may struggle to pay close attention to what's in front of them and rather paying attention to the symptoms.
My life didn't stop with my diagnosis, and I was very lucky. And in 2022, I joined Students with Psychosis and connected with like-minded peers from all around the world.
I joined the SW to build a network of helping people that don't know what I was stuck. For Ms. Answer, the reason I am staying is because I do people that supported community are toxic.
So I guess my message to the world is believe in students with psychosis, believe in our abilities and our talents, and also in our dreams. We have so much to offer to academia and to the workplace. Our lived experience is valuable, and we can all learn from each other. Thank you very much.
I'm so proud of our students. If you would like to learn more about students with psychosis, we have some informational material over there as well. And also, I would like to thank you all for helping give a platform for people living with psychosis. Thank you.